say today, have mercy. Have mercy.
Hey, the good, the bad, and the wrestling, a Tony James podcast. I am Tony James, and I welcome you to the Lariato Ranch as we're going to dive deep into professional wrestling. We're going to talk about events that happened, could have happened, and should have happened. We're going to talk about independent wrestling, and we're going to talk about what goes on inside the squared circle and in the back, Jack. You know what I'm talking about. This is the first episode of the good, the bad, and the wrestling. And I feel there's no better person to kick it off than my opponent, my tag team partner, and the man that's been around longer than you can imagine. That's right, the franchise player, Chris Cruit. So sit back, put your feet up, and take a listen to the good, the bad, and the wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am the franchise player, Chris Cruit, and I am coming to you today from the studios of the lovely studio. My God, this place is nice. The studios of the good, the bad, and the wrestling, a Tony James podcast. And if you want to hear what Tony James thinks about all the good stuff that's ever happened in wrestling, the bad stuff that's ever happened in wrestling, and the wrestling stuff that's ever happened. Yeah, if you listen, Tony James, he's going to tell you what he thinks about it. He's not going to pull any punches. And if I ever get on the show again, I'll let you know exactly how it really went down. So check it out. The good, the bad, and the wrestling of Tony James podcast.
Southpaw Boxing Club, Hilliard, Ohio. Go to Facebook, look it up, check it out, give them a call. They're going to get you in shape. They're going to keep you in shape. They're going to customize what you need. I'm telling you, you walk in, it's a positive experience. It's a positive environment. They know what they're doing, and they get you to know what you're doing. You don't want to miss out. You want to start your journey. You want to continue your journey, whatever it is in your lifestyle. Check out Southpaw Boxing Club. Welcome back to the good, the bad, and the wrestling, a Tony James podcast. Let's quit beating around the bush and let's get back to part two with the franchise player, Chris Cruit.
So, okay. David Von Erich definitely changes Ric Flair's trajectory, changes the landscape. It's a big deal.
Yeah, but it changes the whole WWF expansion. Listen, Vince McMahon, my opinion, is always going to be successful. When you have guys, he's just a different breed.
I'm glad you're saying that.
Go ahead.
I'm glad you're saying that because I was going to bump my number 4 to 3, but I'm going to go with number 3, and this is going to be part of what you're saying. Hulk Hogan stays in the AWA.
Game changer.
I've heard arguments about, well, Vince could find somebody else. They were looking at Barry Windham. They could have kept Sergeant Slaughter.
Vince McMahon is always going to be successful. Man, Hulk Hogan, even though you don't believe this, Hulk Hogan is my guy. Hulk Hogan is if I don't drink all of the Hulk Hogan Kool-Aid, Tony says I'm not Hulk Hogan's guy. Hulk Hogan is my guy. He is the reason that I am in professional wrestling. He's the reason why I watch wrestling. He was the larger-than-life character in professional wrestling. Having said that, that TV time is so valuable. And Vince McMahon is not an idiot. Vince McMahon is going to bring somebody in that is going to continue his expansion. Could it have been Barry Windham? We don't know. Barry Windham was kind of a feather. He would just kind of blow.
Yeah, but see, he's a Florida NWA guy at heart.
Yeah, but if he gets the machine put behind him,
I don't think
it'll make a difference for him.
He's not on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and he's not fighting for the Rock and Wrestling Connection.
And there are absolutely other guys out there. They talk about Dusty Rhodes. I don't think Dusty Rhodes. Is there a Hulk Hogan answer? Maybe not. Maybe there's not a guy that takes the Hulk Hogan spot. Maybe his overall game plan is a different game plan without Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan staying in the AWA, massive.
So
Massive.
my introduction to wrestling, Hogan comes back from Japan. Now I did not see this live as it was played on ESPN, but I saw this on PM Magazine on a national chart. I think it was Channel 6. It was kind of like the extra that is now, the 1 hour news shows for showbiz. It was called PM Magazine. He was in the AWA. They were doing a spot on him. He was in San Francisco at the time doing a handicap match against Dr. D and Maso Saito.
Masa Saito?
Saito, sorry.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. Gesundheit.
God bless you.
So he's in the ring. He's back from Japan. He's in his white T-shirt with no sleeves and his jeans. Jeans talking. Buck Zumhoff's about ready to defend his lightweight title.
Rock and roll, dude.
Yeah, who's now in prison, but that's another story.
Whoa.
So Hogan has vowed, I'm not coming back to wrestle Nick Bockwinkel. This is after Vern has kind of messed people over the first time.
Because he lost, and he said he let the people down.
Yeah, so he's gone. He goes to Japan. Of course, what we don't know as fans is when he went to Japan, Vern is selling Hogan T-shirts and
allegedly,
and even Greg admits to it, and we know Greg lies.
But we can't believe Greg, so maybe it didn't happen.
So Saito hits him with the trophy, knocks him out, bloodies him. Hogan says 1 scar, 1,000 enemies, and it takes off. I'm sitting there watching on Channel 6. I think it was 1983.
Mm-hmm.
Who is this guy? Mm-hmm. Now, I even saw, that's Thunderlips, right? But we're talking just his presence. Mm-hmm. And then to watch his matches and how they build him and how the fans were he loved it in the AWA. He even said that in some interviews. He was making great money. He was going to stay in Japan. When he left for Japan, he stated he had a girlfriend over there. He had an apartment. The money was awesome. He was just going to live in Japan. But they brought him back for this angle. And, of course, he's a USA guy. He's going to go USA. And they run this great angle. Of course, they screw him again with Nick Bockwinkel because the story goes, I'm going to make you champ, but you're going to give me half your fee. You're going to give me your Japan money. And I'm going to continue to skim off the top of your T-shirt money. And you're going to date my daughter. And Hogan's like, no, thanks. She's got a great body, but she looks like Greg.
Hashtag awkward. I think when you say that, though, I think you should be clear. As the AWA champion, there were certain things that you were supposed to do. Your money went up.
Sure.
It was supposed to go up. And when you traveled as the AWA champion, they got a piece of your booking. But so the way you're laying it out is, but I'm going to make you the champion so I can get your money.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. You can tell that story, but you also got to say all the AWA champions.
But based on historical fact, which is interviews by all parties involved, Vern backdoored him. Vern did everything and then told him. He was taking money off the top. He was messing him over. And I know everybody's pissed because Hogan took off, right? And he didn't tell us. Yeah, he told you. And you continued to book matches like Hogan was going to be in the cage matches when you could have said card subject to change, and you could have told people. But once again, Vern Gagne was all about himself. That's why, go back, look at history, Chris. He always booked himself as the champ. I'm going to retire tonight, but I'm going to retire as the champ. I'm coming out of retirement tonight, and I'm going to be in the main event. There was always a double main event when Vern was on the block, and Vern was always the final match.
Yeah, there was never a double main event at WrestleMania 8 with Hogan and Sid. But.
Well, why wouldn't you? And Sid had more.
It was contract.
Sid had more to do with that than Hogan did. Yeah, absolutely.
But do you think that Vern Gagne walked into a room with Hulk Hogan, his top star, and he goes, hey, buddy, just want to let you know, I'm giving you this, I'm taking this, I'm taking this, and I'm taking that.
They didn't walk in. Hogan walked into his office. He was sitting down. And you also got to remember this, because Dr. D even talked about this. Yeah, Hogan and Vern got into a fight at a TV taping because when Hogan found out what Vern was doing with his money and knocked him down and put him in a front face lock. So let's just face it. Vern screwed Vern. to take a saying from Vince
I
McMahon.
don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with
Hogan
that.
stays in the AWA if he's treated better.
But the AWA champion, when Stan Hansen was
well, that's another one that Vern screwed up on.
I think the reason why they made him the champion was because he knew he could get money from him in Japan.
There you go. But then he didn't let him be a champ.
Yeah.
And Stan was like, screw that. I'm done.
outta here.
And then who do you have to drop it back to? Nick Bockwinkel. If the champ wasn't Nick, it was Vern. But my point is this. People followed Hogan. Mean Gene, I don't care what Jesse said, he followed him. They all followed Hogan.
Jesse absolutely followed.
When you look at that 1983 roster picture of the AWA, that is the WWF in 1984.
Yeah.
And it's crazy.
No, Mean Gene for sure isn't leaving without Hogan leaving.
He had Andre.
Even though Mean Gene beat Hogan there, Mean Gene left because he knew Hogan was there.
Absolutely. They all knew the Blonde Bomber was
Andre
coming.
the Giant left because of Hogan.
Yep.
David Schultz left because of Hogan. Jesse Ventura left because of Hogan. And then the ripple effect, all these other guys that came along to the AWA, they're like, we're here hoping to get noticed by the place that Hogan.
Absolutely.
Hogan.
Now, AWA had the Road Warriors and everybody else, but this is my stance. If Hogan stays, we are watching the AWA last night at Elimination Chamber.
I do not agree with that.
Well, I do.
Because I think at some point Hogan's going to leave the AWA because Vern's going to piss him off. But
it's too late after that.
No, it's absolutely not too late. Can you imagine if Vince McMahon built some big-time superstar, a Hogan-esque superstar, and then Hogan shows up 2 years later?
My argument is that doesn't happen. My argument is that all territories remain the same. And if anything, Ric Flair is a bigger deal. Ric Flair brings more, I believe, and I'm not a Ric Flair fan, but I believe if Hogan stays in the AWA, because I grew up on this, all the magazines and everybody talked about was the triple tournament. Hogan versus Flair versus Martel. That's all that was in the magazines. They wanted to see a round-robin tournament, and it always worked out to where Hogan beat Martel, Martel beat Flair, and Flair beat Hogan, and everybody was 1-1, and they had to do it again. But that's what all we looked at was, like, growing up, that was a big deal to us. The three champs, Martel, Hogan, and Flair. Mm-hmm. If Hogan stays, it's Hogan, AWA, Flair, NWA, and I bet you they keep the belt on Backlund or put it back on him, which to me is another thing. I don't even recognize him as champ. Superstar, and that's another one. We'll get to Superstar here in a minute. But who fits WWF's champ?
I don't think Backlund is Vince's guy ever.
Well, then who is it?
I don't know. I've heard the stories about Barry Windham, and Barry Windham fits that mold.
He's
a big guy, great worker. I think he got him over.
He left WWF to wrestle Hogan in Florida, or Flair in Florida.
But you got to remember, but he also wasn't the top guy. But you also got to remember, you got to think about, just because they're in the quote-unquote Hogan spot doesn't mean it's the Hogan exact mold. Doesn't mean they're world champions.
You're absolutely right.
Doesn't mean they're world champions.
You don't have the Cyndi Lauper thing. You don't have Rock and Wrestling. You don't have Mr. T, and you don't have WrestleMania 1. It's all different. And my point is, if Hogan's in the AWA, I don't know. I don't think they know what to do with him. I think they make money with him until they can't do anything.
Can you imagine if Hogan Can you imagine if the AWA roster, the 83 roster, is in the AWA, and then you've got like the modern day Road Warriors, the 85.
Oh my gosh, that would have been crazy.
Printing money.
And you know what? AWA had two great rosters after that with the Curt Hennig era, and then the Destruction Crew era.
The Curt Hennig, I struggle to get into that because of that scenery they had for the promos and stuff with the carpet on the whatever. What was that thing?
I don't know. But you're talking Midnight Rockers. You're talking Bad Company. That group came next. And that group was awesome. Mr. Electricity with Gorgeous Jimmy. All those tag teams and those guys. Then you had Hanson. You had Leon White. You still had Rick Martel. I think he would have had so many people. But once again, Vern didn't know what Vern had to be champ.
Vern at some point was going to upset Hogan. Hogan was at some point going to leave.
Right. Okay. With that being said, my point is Flair brings wrestling.
Without Vern, is there a Hogan? Because Hogan Hogan showed up, and he was a different Hulk Hogan. Let me tell you something, baby.
Okay.
The whole,
Well, he thought he was superstar in Dusty Rhodes.
I get it, but somebody somewhere
I agree with
him.
that. I agree with that.
So
According to Greg Gagne, it was him.
We have got to give Vern or somebody's got to get some credit.
I'm telling you, Vern had everything at his disposal.
But no, who was responsible for the modern day Hulk Hogan? Somebody had to at some point go, hey, this heel, baby, Hulk Hogan thing ain't working. Somebody had to give him some advice.
Well, the fans wanted him face, so they turned him face.
Well, he couldn't have been a worse heel, so yeah.
So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give props to the heels that he fought, like Dr. D and Saito and them. I feel they helped him kind of become who he was.
But how genius of Greg Gagne was it to start ripping his shirt off?
Absolutely. I mean,
if that's true.
I think Hogan actually admits that him and Jim Brunzell ripped his shirt off and the crowd went crazy. It's not rocket science. Something happens in the ring. We all have gone through it, and it works, and you keep using it. I'm telling you, I give Vernon he had it all, and I just think that to wrap this one up, Ric Flair. The style of the NWA becomes more dominant than the WWF style because Hogan stays in it. Because Hogan, if you watch that old AWA stuff, it wasn't cartoonish. It was a mixture of WWF and NWA.
Yeah.
I think the NWA and Crockett take off more with that Mid-South flavor. And I think that goes. I think that's what happens. And then if Hogan does jump ship later, I think it's too late. But that's me. What do you got? You got another one?
What about? We could stick in the mid '80s and we go Magnum TA.
Oh, that's on my list. You better believe it. This is in many ways. It always irritates me when people say that Shawn Michaels the greatest worker ever. I've watched a lot of his stuff. I've been researching it, and I put Magnum TA above Shawn Michaels.
Oh!
And Magnum TA, I think, only had a 6-year career. Magnum TA, when you watch his stuff, it's awesome. The way he was pushed. Everything about Magnum TA. Magnum TA was going to be the NWA heavyweight champion, and that would have ended. Ric Flair never would have made it to 10 championships. I believe that Magnum TA was the Attitude Era before Stone Cold was the Attitude. I do believe that. Magnum TA, man. I got Hogan. Hogan got me in, and Saturday morning Magnum TA's kept me. Magnum TA's man.
So what we're talking about is no Magnum TA car crash.
Absolutely.
Because I think everybody agrees. I don't think there's anybody that says anything otherwise. Magnum TA in 1986,
86.
October was on his way to Starrcade 86 to wrestle Ric Flair and win the world title. I think that is a given. Everybody agrees.
If not in 86, early 87.
I don't think there's any. It seems like 86, Starrcade 86, that was going to be the one.
Absolutely.
So in October of 86, Magnum TA has a horrific car crash, almost ended his life, did end his wrestling career. But on modern day wrestling, it wouldn't even be segment 2, and they'd move on. Well, you can't mourn forever. I love how people, they'll light them on fire, cover them in thumbtacks, and they're like, so up next we get the midgets.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't say midgets. So Magnum TA, the car crash doesn't happen. Magnum TA becomes the world champion. I recently listened to an interview with Magnum TA where he just doesn't even have the confidence anymore. He's like, I think I could have done something, because they're talking about him being the traveling NWA champion as a babyface. In 86, the traveling NWA champion wasn't traveling. He just wasn't. Magnum TA is going to be Jim Crockett Promotions. He's going to be their poster child.
Yes.
And he was so over, his look, his body, his in-ring, his promo, his attitude. Magnum TA is definitely the champion. Is Ric Flair winning it back?
If he does, Magnum TA and him trade the belt on and off for a while. Magnum TA totally. First off, let me go back.
Now, no Magnum, no Sting.
You get Sting.
No, you don't.
You don't get Sting the way you got Sting.
Yeah, you get him, but he's
a side guy.
He's the TV champion.
Yeah. So
At best.
Magnum TA beating Wahoo in a cage, you got to watch it. Then Magnum TA's program with Tully Blanchard. There was so much reality because that was a shoot, baby. Because
That was
then
hard.
you find out later that Magnum TA married Tully's ex-wife. Then you had all that going on backstage.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's why Tessa Blanchard, her stepdad's Magnum.
I didn't.
And that's why she says, I've been trained by two of the best, Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard. See, that was going on real deal, right? That was an awesome program. But the program,
Magnum was wicked.
I'm telling you, anybody listening to this, if you're out there, listen to me. Go watch
I hope they're out.
Magnum TA Nikita Koloff. Watch their matches leading up to the best of 7. You can watch. They have 4 of the 7 posted on YouTube. I wish they'd release the others. And then the rematch after the fact where Magnum pile drives Ivan on the concrete floor and takes the belt and walks away. The crowd. You want to know how to work a crowd? Do you want to know how to work a match without doing what the modern guys do? Go watch Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA, the rematch. It's unbelievable.
Put a link up.
I'll have to do that for you. Magnum TA changes the world of wrestling. Hogan has
Changer.
Hogan. How about this? Hogan stays AWA. Magnum becomes NWA.
And David Von Erich doesn't die.
And then Ric Flair goes to the WWF because he sees the writing on the wall and becomes their champ.
And then Brother Love is the third most recognizable athlete, only behind Hulk Hogan and Muhammad Ali.
Little side note: if you watch the Crockett Cup, the first annual Crockett Cup, and we're gonna do something on that. There's something that irritates Jim Ross irritates me. Bruce Pritchard worked for who's the guy from Houston? Paul Bosch. And it was in Houston, and they were doing the Mid-South or new UWF NWA angle where everybody's champ wrestled. Well, when they introduced Sam Bosch, you would think Bruce Pritchard would do it. Paul Bosch, pardon me.
Sam Mushy and Paul Bosch had a child. That was Sam Bosch.
That's right. Big fingers. Anyway, Bruce Pritchard gets in the ring to announce him, and Jim Ross, you see him get in the ring and basically say, go sit down, get out of here, I'm Jim Ross. I'm like, talk about overrated, but that's another thing. That's a whole other thing.
Wow.
So we can agree that the Magnum TA thing was a big deal. I'm going to give you another one. Superstar Billy Graham.
Superstar.
Wins the belt in 77.
Oh.
Drops it in 78 to Bob Backlund.
Yes, he did.
If he keeps the belt with a nice heel run, turns face and keeps it, you do not need Bob Backlund at all. Superstar keeps it, and you now have Hogan before you knew you had Hogan in Superstar Billy Graham. So now I go back to, if Hogan stays in the AWA, your WWF champion is Superstar Billy Graham.
You think from 77 to at least 84?
Absolutely. Bob Backlund kept it.
7 years?
Yes, absolutely. Superstar.
No, Bob Backlund was champion 5 years.
Right. The Iron Sheik. No, it was 5 or 6. It was 5 or 6.
Well, no, he won in 78. He lost in 83.
Okay, but everybody overlooks the Antonio Inoki win.
That doesn't make his reign longer.
I know, it makes it shorter.
Yes.
So I think if Superstar, I think that was all about Vince Sr. saying, nope, you're keeping it a year no matter what. But I want this guy.
In fairness, when back then with Vince McMahon Sr., which is the stupidest thing ever. It's not Vince McMahon Sr. I get why they do it, but Vince McMahon is not Vince McMahon Jr. It was Vincent Kennedy McMahon is current, and it was Vincent. I don't even remember his dad. His dad's middle name was different, so they're not Senior and Junior, but Vince Senior for this purpose. Vince Sr., when he gave you your date to win the title, he gave you your date to lose the title. I don't know how he knew that in advance. I don't know how he knew that you were just not going to be good enough on September 11th to lose the title, but somehow he knew.
I just think Superstar
wink, wink, nod, nod.
keeping the belt
You see,
heel turning face. You can turn him back
I
heel.
don't see it as much of a game changer as you do. I just don't.
I think it affects if they bring Hogan in.
Absolutely, it has a ripple effect on everything. I just don't see that. And listen, it would definitely have effects on this, have effects on that. I just don't see that as being as big as if Hogan's the third guy. It's not that big of a game changer. It changes the game.
Oh,
But if Hogan's not the third guy, if Hogan doesn't leave the AWA, if Magnum TA doesn't get in a car crash, if David Von Erich doesn't die, those things I think have a much more catastrophic effect on the world of professional wrestling. And immediate impacts.
okay.
I think that has a long-term impact with Billy Graham.
What say you, Outlaw Nation? Let's see what you got to
Of
say.
course, they're going to agree with you.
No, they're
Kiss
not.
your butt.
Okay, well, that's an easy one. We can move on from that one. I have one for you. I read this doing my research on Stan Hansen. Stan Hansen, in his book, talks about when he's over in Japan when Johnny Ace came over.
Mm-hmm.
And Johnny Ace, in the 90s, you had that group of 3 or 4 Japanese wrestlers, and I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce their names. You had the guy in the green and white tights, the guy in the black and yellow tights, the guy in the orange tights, and the guy in the blue tights.
What are we doing?
And those were the 4 guys that got booked everywhere. And Stan's job eventually, from mid-90s on, was to put them over and to get them where they needed to be. Their style of wrestling, Johnny Ace learned, and when he came back to the United States and started working, he started in WCW, and they didn't quite take to it. So when he moved to the WWF, he started implementing the 90s style or mid-90s style wrestling in Japan. More of a stiff, strong style. I'm not talking 2005 or 2008 to present day stuff.
Chop, chop, kick, kick.
I'm talking. There was a time when he went through the early 2000s where you saw a huge change in the style of wrestling in the WWF, and it hadn't quite gotten to the acrobatic. I've seen them all style. Do you consider that something that if Johnny Ace doesn't bring that to America and try to institute what he learned, you got to give. I know not a lot of people like Johnny Ace, but for him to do that. And get into the booking in Japan and understand the way they took 4 guys, right? They took 4 guys and ran with them. Think about the WWF at around that time, late 90s into the 2000s.
Well, Johnny Ace didn't get to WWF until after WCW closed. He was still with WCW.
Right, but he was trying to institute that stuff in the WCW, and it didn't take.
Honestly, I'd have to go back and look. I just don't know the correlation of the guys and who was affected by that. But no, I mean, the style of wrestling absolutely plays an impact on how it's viewed, by the fans and stuff.
You go back and when you get on there and you watch the mid '90s wrestling, all you got to do is get the best of Stan Hansen. He wrestles them all, and then they end up wrestling each other in tournaments.
I should have mentioned earlier when we were talking about Ted DiBiase holding on to the title. Right in that same story, same discussion, Honky Tonk Man doesn't refuse to lose the Intercontinental title.
Right, because they put it on Savage, and that helps Ted DiBiase.
So now Ted DiBiase definitely gets something different, for sure.
Absolutely. Here's one for you. What happens if they never start doing the Raw backstage segments? Because up until then, you didn't have all those segments in the back.
When did they start doing that?
Wasn't that a Russo thing? Wasn't that like 95, 96, maybe 96, 97?
I was going to say 95. You usually had the out fronts. Back 88. When my heyday, I started watching in 87.
Well, the Elizabeth angle on the main event when they took her in the back and had the mat. Oh, that was a backstage.
When Savage and Elizabeth were coming through the curtain, and Jake had the chair.
No. When Hogan and Savage teamed against the Dream Team, And
and she was in the medical.
that was like one of the first big time backstage segments.
Yeah, that predates Russo.
Yeah.
But I mean, other than that,
But they didn't do it on a constant basis where it was the majority of the show.
87, 88, 89, 90, 91, the interviews were conducted either in front of a green screen where they put your logo behind it, your emblem or whatever, or they would be done out front in front of the people on a podium, or they would have the traditional locker room segment where they would do something like that. But yeah, they didn't have the hidden camera or unseen camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have a problem with that though, because I mean, it works in soap operas, it works in movies.
I think.
If you sit down to watch wrestling as a legitimate sport, it can't exist. It doesn't exist in UFC, and it doesn't exist in baseball or football. If you're sitting down to be entertained, that is just one other way
to be entertained
for them to tell the story.
Well, I know you and I talked about this.
But real quick, let me, as you talk about telling different ways to tell the story, how great was it when sometimes telling the story was we passed each other in the aisleway, and a feud was born. I'm on my way to the ring, strutting and cutting, Brutus Beefcake, and you're Outlaw Ron Bass. And we bumped each other. Ron Bass is leaving the ring. Brutus is on his way to the ring. We bump or we just pass each other, and a feud has been born. How crazy is that? That's how feuds used to happen.
Right. I know we talked about
Ron Bass, you passed me in the aisleway last week, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. As I stand in front of my kitchen door making bacon, and you can hear the cat and the phone going off.
Here we talk about that.
So we talked about this, I think it was last week, the Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns, and this is where I think the backstage segments actually help, because you made the comment, which is a good one. They got Sami Zayn over, and he didn't have to wrestle.
Yeah.
Because of the segments and because of the vignettes and the hype packages and following him backstage, and you didn't know the camera. I just didn't like the idiocy of, how do you not know there's a camera over your shoulder when you're telling secrets? And I get it. It's the fourth wall, third wall. It's 7 if you add them together. But I'm just not into that. So like when guys come to me and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to talk to someone who's into that, because I'm not doing that.
We just have to suspend disbelief. Like JT Hall one time told me about a promotion he wrestled for where they did live commentary. When I say live commentary, I mean over the PA system.
Who wants to hear that?
And JT was standing there, and I think it was JoJo Little. He was about to sneak attack JT.
He totally gave him away.
And the commentator said, oh no, look out, JT, behind you. And JT wasn't supposed to turn around. But the commentator said it, so he turned around, and JoJo said, why'd you turn around? He goes, because he said, look out behind you. I mean, it was
that's the beauty of real wrestling right there.
Otherwise, you look stupid. But yeah, I mean, in those situations, you suspend disbelief.
Absolutely.
That they don't recognize. But some of the promotions have tried to reinvent the wheel, and they've tried to create situations where the camera's there, it catches what's going on, but it's believable, it's plausible.
Sure.
They've cracked a door open and zoomed in for 15 feet, and it's not the most beautiful audio because it's 15 feet away.
Right.
Or you had the GTV where it was the CC television.
Yeah.
When we had Randy laid out, he was laid out in the back, and he had been tagged, and we didn't know by who. It was the security camera footage that we showed.
And that was legit security cameras, and Randy was legitimately hurt.
Absolutely. I really feel bad about what happened.
He is a big spoon, and to this day, I told everybody not to trust him, and of course, he proved me right this past
November. I tell you can't trust Randy. Don't loan him money.
Anyway, I believe that it can extend the life of a wrestler, and in independent wrestling, if you use backstage segments, if you've got a guy you want to use, but he can't get it done all the time, you can hide certain things, and you can get a match or two out of him and prolong his life until he gets his act together.
Well, I think getting the personalities across is so important. we talked earlier about Vicious and Delicious, and when we gave him the talk show segment, The Dish with Vicious and Delicious. And that talk show segment is, it has the hindsight or has the ability of hindsight where you can just cherry pick the great. There was a lot of spots in there where it didn't fire on all cylinders, but when it did, it got them across as being important people, and it got some of our storylines across. And I think a lot of times we depend too much on just the in-ring. And, everybody knows how to do the moves. If you're a trained wrestler,
if you're trained,
if you are a trained wrestler, you know how to do a body slam. I know how to do a body slam. You know how to do a suplex. I know how to do a suplex. What's the difference? The character, the personality, the overall ambience,
absolutely,
of you. I can't put on a poster, come see a Hurricane Rana.
Right.
I can never sell a Hurricane Rana, but I can sell Tony James, who happens to do the Hurricane Rana. On a side note, Tony James does not do Hurricane Ranas.
I can do one, I just choose not to because of my hips.
I almost died.
So here's the thing, and I use a hand gesture once in a while. I throw the horns in the air. It's what you do after the horns.
Like you don't care.
Just because you have jacked up tights and a cool hand signal and you give yourself a really catchy name doesn't make jack. You've got to compete, you've got to connect, and you've got to pay the bills. You work for the promoter, and if the promoter treats you right, you need to pay the bills. Let me tell you, if you don't like what the promoter's doing, then go on your way. But never, in my opinion, forget where you came from. So the backstage segments, I think changed the game.
I think they gave you the opportunity where sometimes they used to tell you, oh my God, they used to come out and they go, ladies and gentlemen, we are bringing Terry Gordy and who was the guy? Yeah. The referee, who was the referee? Man, I can't remember anybody's name. Referee comes out and he goes, there was a match going on in the ring, and they go, ladies and gentlemen, if we don't get Terry Gordy and this bad fella out here right now, they've just had a fight in the back, and if we don't have the match right now, it is not going to happen. So we're going to pause this match, and we're going to move on. And, so you didn't see the backstage fight, but you imagined it.
UWF was really good at that.
So now you see the backstage fight.
Yes.
So they've given just another little bit of, being able to just tell the story a little.
I'm going to come back to the segment piece. I'm going to give you one more, and then we're going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about one more piece before we leave. TBS contract for Crockett. As soon as that happened, Magnum TA gets his push. So the story goes, Magnum TA is working for Bill Watts and making really good money. Dusty calls Magnum and says, hey, I want to give you our top spot. You're going to make less, but we can guarantee you $700 a week. You can make more, but we won't pay you less than $700. Everybody thought Magnum was crazy, but he goes, well, you got Dusty Rhodes calling me. I've only got about 3 years in the business. They want to put me in the top spot. I'm going to go work for Crockett. No sooner does that happen, Crockett gets the TBS contract. So now, instead of being known through the southern states, he is nationwide Magnum TA.
Where was Crockett before he got the WTBS?
Carolinas. It was Mid-Atlantic.
Was it just local TV?
Yeah, it was Mid-Atlantic, I believe.
Okay.
So,
because you got to remember, Georgia Championship Wrestling, for our fine folks at home that don't know, they were the TBS spot. But at one point, wasn't it Georgia Championship Wrestling and Crockett on TBS or not?
It was Georgia, and Crockett had Mid-Atlantic.
But were they both on TBS at the same time? Was there a cross?
I don't think so.
One was morning, one was evening?
I could be wrong. I'm sure someone out there knows more than me.
Bill Watts had a piece of it at one point.
He had his own station.
Wasn't he on TBS at one point?
I don't think he was on TBS.
We're going to look into this.
I don't think he was on TBS.
We don't know as much as we claim.
But the thing was, the contract signing Magnum TA, boom, there you go. If Crockett doesn't get the TBS contract, then I think Ric Flair is your true NWA traveling champion rather than, because his home base was with Crockett.
Yeah.
To get him out there more the way he was, you have to get him elsewhere. You got to let him go down and wrestle the Von Erichs, and you got to let him go to Mid-South, and you got to let him go to California and the East Coast and all that, avoiding, of course, WWF. But you got to let him go around the bend to get back over. But the contract, I think it was a game changer for the World Wrestling. If that doesn't happen, I'm not watching Saturday mornings, and I'm not watching 6:05 in the evening.
Well, and when Georgia Championship Wrestling was on TBS, they were a local promotion. Even though they were on a national outlet, they weren't expanding, and they weren't looking to.
Well, I wonder when Vince bought their slot, when he gave it back, is if that's when Crockett took it.
If I'm not mistaken, Crockett's the one that paid for him, or paid for it, because Crockett said, "I
want the slot."
Crockett said, I paid for WrestleMania 1 because I gave him $1 million.
Right, to have that slot.
Interesting story, though. There was no contract with Vince and Ted. It was a handshake agreement. Ted could have canceled at any point in time and just threw him out, but he honored his commitment. He honored the
Imagine
agreement.
that.
And sold it to Jim Crockett. Jim Crockett purchased it from Vince through Ted, or however that worked out. But yeah, I mean, there was no, as far as I understand, there was no paper contract. It was just an agreement, an honored agreement.
So I got an honorable mention here before we take a break.
And I think that's when I think Crockett or somebody, when Vince was on Saturday mornings at Black Saturday, they opened up that 6:05 time slot to somebody else.
Can you imagine? You're used to Ric Flair and Georgia and all that stuff, and you open up with Georgie Animal Steel.
It's culture shock. Culture shock.
Although, if you were up north in Madison Square Garden and you're used to George Steele, and out walks Ole Anderson versus Thunderbolt Patterson, you're like, get these guys out of the freaking ring.
It's not wrestling.
No.
When you grew up on the Northeast wrestling, what is this stuff in the South? And when you grew up on the stuff in the South, what is this stuff in the North?
They talk about wars today. That's egos and pissing contests. The real war was you were an NWA fan or you were a WWF fan, and it was the style. Thank you, Bill Watts. Bill Watts, I couldn't stand him. Bill Watts made a comment when he was promoting his wrestling that we're real because our champs go 60 minutes. And I'm thinking, what's that? Hogan goes 8 because he whoops his butt. Yours goes to a 60-minute draw night after night. Why do I want to follow a champ that goes 60?
Mike Tyson went 90 seconds.
Right.
And he was the real champ.
Absolutely. So Bill Watts basically exposed himself verbally.
Yeah.
By saying my champ goes 60, yours goes 8. Thank you very much, Bill Watts. I appreciate that. And there's 2 or 3 other events that have exposed the business, but we're going to get to that later. So my honorable mention, this always bothered me. Barry Windham should have been the one to beat Ric Flair instead of Ronnie Garvin. I think if Barry Windham beats Ric Flair, Barry holds on to the title longer and it changes.
Not an option. The option was, here's this spot we have. Who is willing to fill the spot? That was it. The spot was win the belt so Flair can win it back.
Yeah, I know, but it just Barry Windham to me, because then Barry ends up winning it from Muta, and he's the NWA. At least he got to be the NWA champ.
It didn't matter then.
I know, but Ric Flair comes back and becomes a champ and ruins Barry's run.
Here's the thing, though. Hogan wins the NWA title from Muta. Does it matter?
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Barry wasn't the guy.
Well, then Barry wasn't the guy back in '84.
Nobody said he was. You just assumed that we say that.
I know. Hey, we're going to take a break. We appreciate you listening to The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling, a Tony James podcast. We'll be right
Ladies and gentlemen, you've got the franchise player, Chris Cruit here, and I am sitting here in the studios of The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling, a Tony James podcast, if you didn't know. And if you want to find out all the coolest stuff that's ever happened in the history of professional wrestling, that was easy for me to say, and a few of the current modern day stuff, and if you want to hear me put Tony James into his place, then you have come to the right place. The Good, the Bad, and the Wrestling.
You find yourself looking for certain parts for your RC? your trucks. You need new tires. You need new remote pieces. You may need a G13 Pro box. Whatever it is, go to Three Brothers, run by Tommy Asher. And you want to go to Facebook. Look them up. Great customer service. They are quick with delivery. I believe they even have hoodies if you want to get your own hoodie and represent the Three Brothers. Once again, go to Facebook. That's Three Brothers RC.
Okay, hey, we're back. Take a little break. Everybody's back to the good, the bad, and the wrestling at Tony James Podcast. I got to tell you, Chris, it's great talking. It's not like being in the ring, but it fulfills whatever. You know, they don't want to put Tony James in the ring. Well, we're going to put him on the airwaves. We're going to put Chris Cruit on the airwaves. You want to put us in the ring, we'll butt heads, we'll tag, we'll do whatever we want. But today, we're just talking wrestling. Now, I got a question for you. We've been talking about some things, and all these coincide with each other if they were all to happen at the same time. But I want to go back to that Raw backstage segment because everybody likes to talk about when did wrestling take a turn? The turn that they haven't come back from.
Which time?
So, to me...
They always come back.
Well, I don't know, man. To me, wrestling, as of it is right now, has gone so far, you can't put it back in the bottle. And everybody's always talked about that. To what it used to be looked as, and now it's just a form of entertainment with actors and actresses. And it's not about what goes on in the ring, but it's about their entrances and the product they sell. And I believe that to be true because I do believe it affects the independent wrestling scene. When I go to an independent wrestling scene, I want to watch action. I don't care if you're selling T-shirts, and I don't care about your Facebook page. When do you think wrestling, to me, isn't wrestling anymore? When did they stop extending belief? Because to me, I agree with Jim Cornette. It's nothing but cosplay now.
Well, if you want to say when did it become cosplay, that's one question. If you want to say when did it stop being wrestling, I think that question is when did it stop being our wrestling?
Oh, that's a better statement.
The cosplay, I mean, that's happened in the last, 10, 15 years. The last 10 years for sure. When did it stop being my wrestling? Because, my wrestling, that's subjective,
Yeah.
I came up on Hogan, Andre, Bam Bam Bigelow, One Man Gang, Honky Tonk Man. Oh, I hated the Honky Tonk Man. And I told him so when I saw him. I said, Honky, I hated you. And he goes, thank you very much. I bought a house. When you look at that, but Jim Cornette looks at that era and goes, that wasn't wrestling. That was wrestling for me because it's what I was brought up on. So when did it, when did I stop being able to defend it?
Good. I like that. Let's go with that. When do you think it got to a point when you could no longer defend it?
In the mid '90s, it was tough being a wrestling fan. Early mid '90s. 92, 93, 94, 95, being a WWF fan. Whew, you didn't tell a lot of people you were WWF fans because there wasn't a lot of good stuff. I still watch, I watched everything. I watched every piece of wrestling that came on. Same thing with the magazines. I remember getting a magazine that was New Wave Wrestling or something, and it was like all the other magazines were like $2. This was like $1.25. So you knew what you were getting, and it was terrible, but I loved it. It was wrestling. I loved wrestling. Then in the mid to late 90s, 96, 97, it became cool again. So as a wrestling promoter, when I go around, ECW put a real hurting on what I promote as wrestling. I promote family friendly entertainment. ECW put a hurting on that.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff now, people catch on YouTube and they laugh at it. And that makes it difficult for me to sell wrestling sometimes. People are like, I saw that. I like it's different live and in person.
Right, absolutely.
But this latest breed isn't my favorite. The cosplay stuff, the 95 super kicks in a match. guys walk out with not a mark on their face, but their thighs sure are bruised to hell.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the way you put that. When did it not become my wrestling? I'd have to say, believe it or not, recently for me, I was a little stale on wrestling, and then Finn Balor, Prince Devitt came over. I was a Prince Devitt fan, so when I got to see him as Finn Balor, it rejuvenated my interest. I thought what NXT was doing at the time with the roster they had, it was no longer about extending my disbelief. I wanted to see quality wrestling, and you were getting it with that NXT group. Charlotte Flair, anytime I can see her in the ring, I just love the fact that she controls, pardon me, a ring and an arena.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to see someone wrestle at her speed.
Did I tell you about the time that
Yes, I saw it.
Flair and I started dating?
I saw it happen at the pay-per-view.
I've been dating Charlotte Flair since Kentucky. She still won't respond to my Facebook friend requests. She's just playing hard to get.
Well,
I heard she's married. But,
well, check her MySpace page out. That might help.
Yeah, might get me there.
There's a way about the way she wrestles that even though I'm in on it now and I know that the days of is it real, is it not, is gone.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I like telling the guys is, let's talk about Santa Claus for a minute. Is Santa Claus on the up and up? Do you know if Santa Claus is on the up and up? Because I know if Santa Claus is on the up and up, but let me tell you about somebody who doesn't know.
Well, let me tell you this.
That 0 to 9 demographic.
Oh.
At least they believe.
Well, let me tell you. When I say, is it real, is it not, the majority, and I'm talking the majority of your independent wrestlers, love telling you what's going on. Keep your mouth shut.
The next day on Facebook.
It ruins.
On
it ruins the guys who like to keep it close to the vest.
I just wrestled Tony James tonight. It was such a great match. The crowd was on fire.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I have no problem going into a ring and keeping it the way it needs to keep it, whether it be shoot or work.
I get it. Listen, I get it. I know what wrestling is. I get it.
Right.
Well, but I mean, it's like some of these podcasts, where they expose wrestling. I don't say that like, they're like, ooh, they're exposing wrestling, but they love to tell you that it's not real. Like they just figured it out. Like, hey, did you know wrestling ain't real?
There's more to it. It's not as cut and dry as people think it is.
It's so, and these guys, these podcasters, that are doing these podcasts that have never stepped foot into a ring, but they've watched 50. Bull Miller, the great and fantastic. We're going to name drop the great and fantastic. My best friend in the history of my life was Bull Miller. I spent, there's no person on this earth that I've spent more time with in the cars, driving up and down the highways and the byways than Bull Miller. And Bull Miller used to tell me, I watched brain surgery done quite a few times, but I don't think you want me operating on you. So you get these guys that they've got to, and listen, there's nothing wrong with an opinion. Right. You can have an opinion. You can watch things for one time or 1,000 times and have an opinion. But when you come on here and you start stating that, you start trying to use the inside lingo, he knows how to work like a big man. When somebody comes up to me and tells me I like that he works like a big man, I shut off the conversation. We're done talking, If you want to talk to me like a fan, we'll talk like fans. If you want to talk on the inside, well, you better take a couple back bumps.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And like I said,
a tangent. I don't even know where we started.
Yeah, I was just asking when it kind of went, like you said, when it stopped being our wrestling. And I was just saying, I still, Charlotte Flair, Finn Balor, not so much what he's doing now, but I'm still a Finn Balor fan. I love Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes, to me, what he's doing now with his promos, his vignettes, and how he approaches stuff, there's a hint of realism to me.
He bridges the gap.
Yeah, I'm intrigued. I tuned in last night hoping he was on there.
He doesn't insult anybody.
No.
He bridges the gap.
I get it. I don't feel insulted, and I don't feel like I'm wasting my time when I'm watching Cody Rhodes. When his match against his brother that started the whole AEW scenario. I was hoping that's how AEW would continue, and they didn't. And so I shut them off, and that's my right to do that. Everybody else loves them, and I think it's great. But those would be my big three. With that being said, I would say more so I'm disappointed in the independent scene and how they handle things, and that's what did it for me. When being so close to it, and then watching guys, nothing infuriated me more with certain things that happened before and after an event that just affected me. And I'm not going to go into detail because I'm not going to be the one that opens up the curtain. But I will just say now when I look at a wrestling magazine, if I feel if I were a woman, I'd be a little upset because they've gone back to objectifying women, in my opinion. The women with real talent can get away with wrestling.
Are you talking about on the indie level?
Oh, India level, definitely.
The indie level, the what happens with the females a lot of times just absolutely disgusts me. You know, I'm not a fan of male on female violence. And listen, if you want to sit here and have a discussion about whether or not a man's as good as a woman, we can have that discussion. There's a reason why women don't play in Major League Baseball. There's a reason why you can be the greatest professional basketball player in the WNBA, but there's a reason why there's a W before the NBA. You're just the women. It's this isn't a chauvinistic thing. Women are just the WNBA players would kill me. They would destroy me. I'm not a basketball player. But when you don't see UFC fighters, women against men, they're built differently. It's just the way it is. So we can get into that discussion all you want. They're built differently. I don't like seeing the men against the women. I think it makes the men look bad when they get beat up. I think it makes the men look bad when they beat up a woman. And that's listen, I think I'm in the majority on this discussion, but the majority is quiet. I'm the silent majority. The minority, they sure do like to scream as loud as they can, and it makes it seem like they're the majority. If you're a female wrestler, you want to wrestle a man. If you're a male wrestler and you want to wrestle a female. I don't care. I don't like it. It doesn't do anything for me.
On my end, and hey, it's a woman's body, it's a guy's body. They can do what they want with it.
My body, my choice.
That's right. When they're out in the ring and they want to wear skimpy stuff and parade around, if they're getting paid millions of dollars to do so. But the only reason I bring that up is because I remember when the Charlotte Flairs, the Baileys, the Sasha Banks came in, they wanted to switch gears and get away from the diva division where it was just women and who were barely dressed, walking around showing themselves.
What makes you think that it's gone back to that?
I believe so.
Well, I mean,
the only fan pay or the fans only, whatever you call it.
That's them.
I know they're doing that, and so when they get in the ring, it's hard for me to.
So you're saying they're doing it to themselves?
I believe in some. Well, you telling me the WWE doesn't benefit when someone comes down dressed the way they do and getting in the ring and acting the way they do? Because you watch the match, there's a distinct difference between the two or three girls that you would consider high quality wrestlers, pro wrestlers. I would love to see. I always said I thought Charlotte Flair would be the first overall heavyweight champion. Tessa Blanchard beat her to it by beating Edwards. I believe it was Edwards in the TNA winning the
I don't remember who it was, but yeah.
Yeah, I always thought it would be Charlotte Flair, and I thought it would be a great match, and I thought it would be legit, and you wouldn't see a male versus female.
That's not realistic. It's just not realistic.
I think Charlotte Flair's at that level.
It's just not realistic. You wouldn't have put. You could take the top 3 girl boxers in the history of the world. You wouldn't put them in back to back to back against Mike Tyson.
No,
you wouldn't do it because they would get crushed.
But the wrestling landscape has changed now, and it's okay to do that.
But when some of the things that disgust me on the indie level is when they've stooped to taking things out of their body and sticking it in other people's mouths, and again, there's all kinds of different entertainment that doesn't work for me. And my problem with that is, then if I've had a sponsor who went to that show not knowing it was going to be like that, it really it hurts when I go back and I try to sell family friendly wrestling. They're like, no, I saw this, right? Well, that's not us.
Well, and that goes back to the event is more than just you and your match and you getting yourself over. There's at least 6 more matches, or 5, including yourself, which 6. And you got to understand your place in the lineup and what you're doing. And here's the thing that I have found: most of the guys don't want to play. They're there to do their thing, to do their stuff, and it's all about them and to screw the rest of it.
My girlfriend's coming tonight. I need you to feature me.
Yes. Or my mom's in the audience and she wants to see me do a superplex.
Does your mom need a refund? And I told the guy one time. He said, I'm not happy with my spot. And I said, would you want to not be on the event? Well, no, I do. My girlfriend's coming. Tell your girlfriend not to come. Simple as that.
Right.
Tell your girlfriend not to come. I didn't book this event for her. I booked it for my fans.
Absolutely. So I think with all that, for me, I would say in the past year or so, wrestling, I don't get as worked up when people question it like I used to.
When we went to Ring of Honor there a few years ago, when the Young Bucks were there,
and Cody was there,
and man, that was not my wrestling. A couple years earlier, I went. It was at the fairgrounds, and there was some big moose-looking dude. He might even have been named Moose. I can't remember. Just a big guy, and he hard hitting. And then them boys, the Briscoe brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been like I don't consistently follow Ring of Honor, but I know what stands out to me. And when I went to that event at the fairgrounds in Columbus, the Briscoes stuck out to me. They looked real.
Yes.
They looked real.
Yes.
This Moose fella, it might have been Moose or it might have been
I think it was.
Just a big guy. He had like a real interesting get up. It's been years. I'm struggling to remember now, but he stood out to me. When we went to the one recently in the last couple of years where it had the Young Bucks and like the big 6-man or 8-man tag or whatever, it was ha-ha. It was ha-ha.
Yes.
And a lot of people enjoy it.
Yes.
I don't.
The masses, the ha-ha, the cosplay, the internet has all taken it and turned it into what the current people want. And basically, if we want to survive, we either try to do it our way or we have to conform to the way they want it.
You'll know if it's viable because people will pay for it.
Right. At the end of the day, I still feel the essence of real pro wrestling is still alive. And if you get 2 guys who know how to do it, they can go do what they need to do, beat the crap out of each other, and people will enjoy it. I do.
The problem is wrestling it's not like a TV show in like when you turn on Roseanne and you turn on Seinfeld, it's you can tell this is Roseanne, this is Seinfeld because 2 different locations,
right.
2 different scenes. Every wrestling ring at its core has a 4x4 or 16 by 16. I'm sorry, 4 square sides wrestling ring in the center. So in that respect, Ring of Honor looks similar to PWA, looks similar to WWE, looks similar to AEW. So sometimes it's hard to differentiate. So when you're out there putting on your brand of professional wrestling, and it's so far removed from mine, and some of my people or some of my potential sponsors or sometimes it makes it difficult. Sometimes
Absolutely.
It makes it difficult.
I was told by a guy, don't go out there, they won't like your style. And he's right. I'd still like to go out and give it a try just to kind of raise, getting somebody's crosshairs.
Well,
but that's the bottom line.
I've been to events where I think I'm pretty decent, at least decent at what I do, and I know how to get over. I know how to stir people up, and I've been to events where I couldn't, and it was because it wasn't a wrestling crowd. It was guys, guys pretending to be wrestlers, and they brought their sister.
Yeah,
and their sister wasn't there to see a wrestling show. Their sister was there to see them.
Absolutely,
and so it was. They made it very difficult, and some people would sit out there, maybe rightfully so, say, "Well, you should have been able to do something." You're not wrong. You're not wrong, but it made it difficult. So the few wrestling fans that were in there, were outweighed by the few, the other few fans that were there to see their brother, that were there to see their sister.
Yeah, you're right. Oh, hey, well, we go on and on about this, and we will in other episodes. In fact,
God,
we're going to split this one in half and make it a two-part.
cut it in half, make it two.
That's right. I want to send out a shout out though.
You're like Solomon, wasn't he that king that cut the baby in two?
And I'm thinking, you're thinking of what was that called? Deadly Night Part 5.
No, where the two parents were fighting over the baby, and King Solomon, he was wise, and he said, "I'll just cut the baby in two." And the one lady goes, "No, don't cut my baby in two." And he goes, "You're the one I'll give it to." The other one, she wanted me to cut the baby
Absolutely.
in two.
Yep, I'm thinking of the Deadly Night thing. So just to review what we've talked about, I want to give a shout out once again, professionally speaking, to our independent guys out there, Jeffrey Excellence, Pookie, and Victor Vanko, and Victor's entourage, if you will. Was it Kenny Casanova?
Kenny Casanova
and Shane Aldenoff. If you get a chance to watch their stuff on YouTube, if you're in their area when they're wrestling and beating up people, give them a tumble, because I'm telling you, they know what they're doing and they do it well. I'd also like to let you know the PWA is not dead, baby. It is.
The rumors of our demise have been greatly exaggerated, unless it's true, and then that sucks.
Absolutely. PWA is just taking a nap, being patient, and picking its spot. With that being said, I appreciate the franchise player, Chris Cruit, coming on. We're definitely going to have you back, Chris. This has definitely got to be a reoccurring role. What do you say about that?
Listen, we're basically just taking our arguments from the telephone and putting them on the internet for the world to hear. So, if the thing is with Tony and I went to his birthday party recently, and I had a shirt made up and it said, "I'm here to bring the argument." And I said, man, it would be awkward if we didn't argue tonight. But I don't want to force an argument. And about 15 minutes later, we had a legit argument, and I started sweating, and he was wrong, and he never admitted to it, and I forgive him for that.
I appreciate that.
We'll have to talk about the Sting Hulk Hogan start.
Oh, don't give. That's the next one. We're going to have to talk about 97 Sting Hogan. But before we get to 97 Sting Hogan,
you're really going to get my dander up on that one. Like I really, you hurt my feelings.
And with that being said, I want to thank everyone for listening to part 1 and part 2 of the Good, the Bad, the Wrestling of Tony James podcast. We will be coming back real soon. Be patient, be kind. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Chris, thanks for coming. We'll see everybody later. Be good. God is great.
Send them home. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.